Welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. I'm Ani Anderson.
And I'm Brian Trzaskos. Join us as we explore the science
and art of trauma-sensitive somatic practices and tools.
Strengthen your practice as a coach, therapist, or holistic professional.
Master the art of motivating even the most challenging clients when you understand how to tap into and unlock your client's complete holistic intelligence.
If you want to learn the most cutting-edge, research-supported skills for personal and professional mastery, you've come to the right place. Let's get this conversation started.
Hi, and welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. We are on episode 56 today. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Ani.
Hi there.
How are you doing?
Really good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm excited for today's podcast.
Why is that?
Because we're talking about some of my favorite people.
Oh, yeah?
Today.
Who's that?
Occupational therapists.
That's me.
Yeah, that's some of my favorite people.
Oh, thanks, Brian.
Yeah. So today we're talking about occupational therapists and somatic coaching. Is it a match?
It's a match. It sounds like it's a game
Is
show.
It a match? Well,
Is
maybe
this
it is. Is it a game show? Is it a match? Let's see. Yeah. Interesting. I think about occupational therapists, and I have to make an admission. Actually, so here's
All right, great.
an
I
admission
love it
right
when you
in
do
front
this
of
in front
like
of everybody.
thousands of people.
You could have said it to me in our kitchen, but whatever.
I'll say it right now.
Yes.
So,
dear.
when I was back in the School of Allied Health Professionals at SUNY Buffalo, where I earned my physical therapy degree way back when. So in that school were exercise physiologists and occupational therapists.
And physical therapists.
Right?
Well, of course.
Yeah, and we all went through that school together.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, like in like gross anatomy, so we did a lot of classes together.
Yeah.
And some of those prerequisite classes, especially like gross anatomy. And there were some occupational therapy students that I got to know, and such nice people,
Amazing
really great people in a lot of ways. Really kind of emotionally attuned kind of folks, which I did not get at all then. I did not have the emotional maturity to really understand what the heck was going on over there.
Age of like 19,
21, whatever. I did not know what was going on over there in the School of Occupational Therapy. And because of that, I just didn't understand it.
Yeah, right.
And so you all seemed a bit off to me. But that's because I was off. That's because I was not emotionally attuned. But that's my admission. Like I did not have the emotional maturity to really appreciate how important and how wonderful occupational therapy and occupational therapists are. And over the course of my 30 plus years as a PT,
working a lot
and
with
teaching, and especially when I worked at Craig, we did a lot of co-treatment with OTs.
Yeah.
I got to learn a lot more about the occupational therapy profession.
Not as weird as
and I really gained so much respect and so
Yeah.
much appreciation and just so much likingness. I don't know what the word is, right? I've worked with a lot of OTs over the years that are just such great people, likable people, kind, open-hearted, knowledgeable, holistic. And I think that's really the word, really integral, holistic people. So much more than physical therapists that I've met over the time. And just because we haven't been trained that way. Most PTs are not trained with that level of holism that OTs are.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kicking off the episode, just throwing like a lot of love to my OT friends out there in the world. And appreciation for y'all.
I have a little admission myself, going through Allied Health School and then graduating into a system where the physical therapist job is actually quite revered. In general, the OT job is a little bit more misunderstood. I kind of felt like the physical therapists in general were kind of stuffy. Like it felt like a hard time relating to the physical therapists and I had a lot of friends who were physical therapists in college and then graduating, working together. But there was always this more rigid kind of nature that I had a little bit of a hard time relating to. And I will admit that what I did to myself was I made meaning that I was less than somehow, which can be corroborated by how the system functions with
Sure. Yeah.
occupational therapists.
Yeah,
You
it's a
know,
lot
oh, you're not the PT. You know, we were waiting for the real rehab therapist. Like I actually had people say that to me sometimes. So, yeah, interesting. So there's an interesting dynamic within the professions anyway. Hey, when I went to college, my major was athletic training. And short sidebar story, the reason I chose athletic training was because I thought, and my mom helped me to come up with this idea that as a athletic trainer, I was going to be able to help dancers because I was a professional dancer at the time. So when I chose a major, I chose athletic training because we know as professional dancers that we are athletes.
Yeah.
uh, so I went to college and they were like right in freshman year, we were taping ankles
Mhm.
in for teams. And I learned within the first year that athletic training is all about team sports.
Mhm.
And then it was physical therapists actually who helped dancers
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
out there in the world. So I went to the PTOT department and I said, I'm in the wrong major as an athletic trainer. I'd like to do physical therapy. And they actually told me, we think you would be better suited for occupational therapy. And I don't remember all of the nature of that conversation, but I didn't know what occupational therapy even was. But I did take their recommendation for that. And they must have seen my uniqueness and my what would you call it? Off-putting, what did I say?
A little offness.
My offness. It must have seen my offness and put me in the kooky bunch.
I'm telling you, I don't believe that anymore. I'm just saying
I
that was my very immature experience at the time.
I can totally see why, you know, well, you would think that. I mean, I'm thinking back to my graduating class of about 45 people, and we were a unique bunch. You know, some of us were really into kids, working with kids, and some of us were really into anatomy, and some of us were really into psychosocial, and some of us were really into the spiritual nature, and some of us were really into the physical nature. And like you said, holistic is a part of the OT kind of curriculum and how you think as an occupational therapist inherently. And so there was a lot of kind of interesting people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. OTs do so many things.
Yeah.
You know, that's one thing I've learned over my period of time is there's so many different niches and places that OTs bring value and make changes and contributions in people's lives. It's really phenomenal.
One of my favorite ways that OTs make contributions, to be honest, is as they grow in their profession and they what word do I want to use? Transition into other jobs. Boy, I've seen so many cool OTs who are deans and leaders and managers and CEOs and entrepreneurs, and it makes for a really unique skill set to be able to do other professions in a really unique way too.
Yeah. I think, when we start talking about coaching and somatic coaching, because here we are, we're asking, is this a match, right? Is occupational therapy and somatic coaching a match? And we'll let you know at the end of the podcast whether or not it's a match based on our conversation. I've seen several OTs become really great coaches. And I think a lot of that in my very thin knowledge about the OT profession compared to so many other people is the psychosocial background that is a basic part of all occupational therapy training, to be able to understand people holistically, not just as physical beings, but as multi-dimensional beings. When I travel and I teach, I'm always teaching to mixed audiences of physical therapists and occupational therapists. There might be a couple other professions kind of mixed in there, but it's usually PTs and OTs. And a lot of what I'm teaching is about the integral idea of body, mind, spirit kind of framework. And the OTs are like nodding their heads out there, and the PTs are kind of scratching their heads. Huh? So in the audience. And so
we learn that
very quickly, it's a foundational part
of how we're taught.
So how does that map on to when you think about becoming a coach and a somatic coach? Like, what's the mapping there?
Well, I think there's a bunch of things, but one of the things that comes to me is, we teach here at the academy that everybody is already whole and there's health in everything. And I think that my OT schooling was the first place that I started to entertain that that was true, because of our psychosocial background. And so as an OT, I was always looking for places of possibility where I might see my physical therapist counterpart. So I don't know if this is a part of your training or not, but I would see my physical therapy counterpart kind of come from a what's wrong? Let's get you back to baseline. We teach about this in our level 3 program, the Somatic Coach Professional program, where we actually come from a very different paradigm here at the Somatic Coaching Academy, whereas a lot of therapeutic based professionals come from a paradigm of something's wrong, something happened to you, let's get you back to baseline. And then a lot of coaching methodologies come from a place of you're at baseline, let's go past your potential. But there's no real bleed over into that idea that perhaps when something challenging happened, there was a seed of potential within that to create even more potential. So some of that was baked into my OT training to think
Mhm.
in terms of potential, even if somebody was coming to me with a problem.
Interesting.
Yeah. Um, and I think you nailed it right there with the psychosocial component. So we think about like psychosocial aspects
Hmm.
of a person. And I don't know that a physical therapist does. And so when I got out there in the system and I started working with clients, I could actually be looking like I'm doing the exact same treatment as a PT sometimes. Like we're going to help a client who had a hip replacement get out of bed and transfer,
Yep.
right? That's
Mhm.
something I could have done in OT and you could have done in
Sure.
PT,
Yeah. Did
right?
both that. Yep.
But when I'm going to go do it, I'm thinking about where does this person live and what kind of things do they need to do and who else are they responsible for? Because I'm already starting to put them in a context of who they are as a person and what they need to accomplish in their lives. And I think that that really matches up with how coaches think. They start to put people in context. It's not just like, I want to do this one thing and it's isolated. I think, especially somatic coaches start to put people into context.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
those are the things that
Yeah,
off
it's
the top of my
interesting
mind.
you're talking about that because I've somehow kind of absorbed that over time, and I think a lot of it came from my formative training years at Craig Hospital,
Yeah, well,
where
you
we
did a
we
lot
were
of
so
co-treatments, right?
enmeshed with co-treatments with PTs and OTs. We did so much stuff together as an integrated team.
And that was a really special
You
place.
a really amazing place where everyone was on an equal footing in terms of how we all added value, and
Yeah.
there wasn't a lot of boundary issues around you're doing my thing, I'm doing your thing kind of thing. Like that never came up really.
Well, and you also kind of it sounds like your treatments really flowed and meshed. Whereas I did co-treatment sometime where the PT would like sit in a chair and wait for me to quote unquote finish.
Yeah, no, we
You
did
know, it's
everything together, and it was kind of, and of course we had treatment plans that were very integrated that included everybody. So
right.
what you were doing was affecting what other people on
Yeah.
the team were
Boy, that's
doing.
so
It was
much fun,
so
isn't
much
it?
fun,
Yeah.
and I learned so much again by. I think I just really absorbed a lot of understanding from how the OT professionals were working with their
Yeah.
people around psychosocial dynamics and understanding context and thinking ahead about what's this going to look like when you go home. Like all those kinds of things I didn't really, again, pick up a lot of stuff in PT school, but I learned a lot in those formative years at Craig.
I have to agree with you. I did a really powerful internship at the Denver Children's Hospital in Colorado, and they're a really big teaching hospital, and they do some really fantastic programming, totally awesome. And because we did these integrated, like truly multi, not dimensional,
Disciplinary. Yeah.
multidisciplinary um, team treatments, I got to really appreciate physical therapists and speech therapists on a really different level. And not only was my schooling not like that, but my professional work was not like that either. So it was this really special time and it was so much fun. It's so much fun and it's so exciting. And I think, again, is coaching a match? Ding. I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate about coaching is like that multidisciplinary approach where you're like your peers and you're in it like with your client. Like there's the
Yeah, right. Yeah,
relationship
exactly.
with the client where it's not I'm the expert on the pedestal like dictating to you what to do, but in that multidisciplinary approach, we are on a team and you're a part of the team and I'm a part of the team and
Mhm.
coaching is like that. And it's It's part of what I really
Wow.
love
Okay.
about the
That's a really
process.
cool ding. I mean, that's like a thing that I hadn't thought of. Like the idea that as OTs are trained in multidisciplinary kind of team formats, that you're actually creating a team with your client. And we talk about that in the coaching academy, your team with your client, but I hadn't made that link
I think,
between, but then that's like a foundational part of the training
yeah,
of being an OT.
I
That's
don't
cool.
remember anybody, not like I would, it was like 25 years ago, but I don't remember anybody saying to me, you're a team with this person. But I kind of remember feeling that like that. Like, how could I not be? Because I need to know enough about you to be able to help to come up with a treatment plan that's really going to meet you so that you can go home and do the things that you need to do, or like when I was working with kids, so that you all can function as a unit better together no matter what is happening with different levels of physical ability and all of that stuff. So just kind of that idea about knowing enough and the context about the client and the family and stuff, that interest and that context, I think helped to kind of give that frame of reference that we're on a team together.
Yeah. Yeah. So another point that when I'm teaching and at the end of one of the courses that I teach, when we're talking about how to inherently help motivate clients, one of the secret elements in that is to make sure that whatever we're asking the client or patient to do to help them, that it's meaningful to them. And so when we've had that conversation about make it meaningful, again, the OTs are like
Yeah,
nodding their head, and the PTs are like, "Oh, wow,
that's
okay,
a good idea.
that's important, I guess." But so let's talk about this again, idea of making meaning. So I'm thinking about again holistic training. So when I think about holistic training, there's a component of that where part of what you're being taught is the importance of meaning making.
Yeah, well, it's a foundational aspect of, I mean, that's what OTs do. I think if you look it up in the dictionary, is using meaningful activity
Hmm.
to help somebody to rehabilitate. So meaning's baked into the very definition of OT. And then we do a lot of training about what that means and how a person creates meaning in their life. And the way that, from the way I learned it, from a standpoint of occupational therapy, is we create meaning as human beings through the roles that we play and the activities that those roles have within them. So I create meaning in my life as a mother because I make lunches and I help my children with their homework, or I drive carpool, or those doings that help to define the role.
Hmm.
And the doings have meaning to the role, which the roles have meaning to my identity. So right? Like
Right.
in coaching, we're talking about who
Hmm.
you are and who you want to be and how you show up and your identity. And one of the things that I think is actually missing from the coaching training that and kind of, talk that I've been a part of, that I think OTs can really hear on a different level is, so here's maybe another ding for is it a match? OTs can really hear from a different perspective that when I'm going to change my life, when I choose to change my life, it means that there's going to be identity shifts, role shifts, and potentially activity, vocational, and what by vocation, I mean meaningful activity shifts within the context of that change. So a person who usually, not always, but usually sees an OT is coming to an OT because something happened. So a change was impressed upon them. But from a coaching perspective, our clients are choosing change, but the common denominator there is change. So we are taught in OT school about how change has, for the most part with OT, the person's not consciously choosing it, change has happened to them. And when there's change, these are the ripple effect kind of things that are going to happen. So we're already have a context around how to think about the changing nature of an individual in terms of identity, roles, behaviors, and things like that.
Wow, yeah, that is the core part of coaching, right? And so if there's already background in that, that's a huge check mark, huge thing.
Yeah, and we have so much, I mean, I did had so much education around that as an OT that I think when I heard it as a coach, I was able to go way deeper with the information and from a just a deeper place than a lot of my colleagues who I saw go through it and were like, yeah, I get it. When there's a change in roles and identity and behaviors, and okay. And I was like, whoa. But when you see people go through that from a place of like their lives have been destroyed from injury, car accidents, um, difficulty with all kinds of nature of things or surgeries and things, it just hits different. To use the phrase that my kids would
Yeah.
say, it just hits different when you've had the experience to go through those kinds of changes with someone from a therapeutic standpoint, that when people are choosing conscious change, I think you have a deeper reverence. That's the word I want to
Okay.
use, a deeper reverence for the profound nature of change, whether it is something that happens to us or something that we're choosing.
Okay, cool. That's great. Amazing. So why, with all the amazing training that occupational therapists get around psychosocial dynamics, around holistic kind of um, meaning making, treatment, looking at people as whole beings, multidimensional kind of beings. So why would an occupational therapist want to either become a somatic coach or learn somatic coaching skills? How is it going to benefit an occupational therapist who both decides to stay working in the system?
Sure.
And how can it also benefit an occupational therapist who decides to maybe start something new on their own?
Okay, so you just asked me kind of three different questions. So the first one is this idea about
Yeah, why would an occupational therapist want to become a somatic coach
why
or
would they want to become a
learn
therapist?
somatic coaching
Okay,
skills?
so I had people tell me in recent history in the occupational therapy world that basically occupational therapists can go out and just be coaches because we have enough background in our training to be able to do that. Now, coaching's unregulated, so literally anyone can go call themselves a coach. So, of course, an occupational therapist can go just hang a shingle and call themselves a coach, and I've seen plenty of people do that.
But so can an accountant,
Exactly,
right? Okay.
hairdresser, bartender, anybody can do that. But why would a person want to go and get trained as a coach, and why would they want to get trained as a somatic coach?
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm curious about.
So, right. So we're not trained as coaches. I think is one of the simple answers I want to tell you. And from what I was describing about that paradigm of therapists are taught that somebody comes in and you get them back to baseline, and the coach is taught that somebody comes in, they choose change, and you want to help them reach a potential. Just that right there is a very different way of thinking, that when you distill it down and you learn how to help somebody who's quote unquote fine, then create change in their lives. It's a very different thing. I see a lot of therapists actually struggle with this when they come in to learn somatic coaching, and we start to peer share and peer practice and things like that, because they don't they're not trained to just ask any person who's fine how they want to improve, because we're trained that something's wrong. So the therapist is inclined to dig around until we find a problem.
Okay.
So that's just, why to have the occupational therapist go in coaching. Now, why would somatic coaching make sense? And I'm just going to use the frame of reference from the Somatic Coaching Academy, because each somatic coaching program is very different.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So we come from a place where the body mind split never happened. So it's a very embedded body mind spirit philosophy, and it just jives. So it just speaks to an occupational therapist when they hear how we think about coaching. So they might hear, do I want to get a coaching certification? They might hear from different coaching methodologies and think, does that resonate with me? Does that resonate with me? But a lot of times OTs hear our philosophy and they're like, yes, that's how things work. That's how humans work. That feels so aligned to me. So it feels in super alignment. And it's so much fun to learn more things that feel super in alignment for us. And so they just get in there, and they, with their background already, are able to dive in and dig in and make these connections that, people will say all the time are like the missing piece. Like there was just a little something that was missing. That's the missing piece. The other missing piece that's a part of that is a lot of OTs in some capacity are interested in, although they might not be able to articulate it, energy medicine. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
baked in to how we teach here at the academy. And so a lot of times they don't know it, but when they come in and we start using words about energy and energy medicine, they're like, oh, I never had language around that. It's kind of how I feel like I operate or what I believe, but I didn't know it was a thing and I didn't know how to do it. And now you're showing me and you're
Hmm.
teaching me, and that's really exciting. So that was the first part of your question.
Right.
And then the second part of your
So
question
next
was
question is,
in the
so if,
system.
yeah, if an OT is in the system, like how can having somatic coaching skills help them internally?
One of the ways is because in the system, we are compressed to a certain amount of time that's dictated by insurance companies, and we have to do things in a certain way. And I think that having somatic coaching skills has a giant benefit because you can help your clients to get results quicker
Hmm.
and more sustainably. You can make a deeper, more meaningful connection with people quicker. I mean, we're talking quick because a lot of times in the insurance-based systems, we don't have tons of time.
Hmm.
And as an occupational therapist in the system, at least at the end of my career in the system, I was primarily doing assessments with people. And then the people who worked under me, the assistants, were doing most of the treatments.
Hmm.
With somatic coaching skills, I could hone in and ask very laser pointed questions more easily, more effectively to determine more quickly and easily and effectively the ideal treatment strategies that are going to help them get where they want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, I just want to make sure you brought up a good point right there, looping in that we're also talking, when I talk about OT, I'm also talking about OTAs. I'm talking about kind of the OT profession. So everything we're talking about, hopefully, I know there's different training between OTs and OTAs around evaluations and those kinds of things, but certainly in what you've just talked about in terms of doing treatments, helping with deeper connections more quickly,
Yeah.
helping to learn how to ask the right questions that create a deeper change, learning to ask questions that specifically are geared towards motivating a client
Yep.
or a patient to
Yep.
help themselves. Like those all apply to OTAs as well.
Yeah, you're going to have a better time at work and your people are going to get better outcomes when you make a meaningful connection with that human being. And somatic coaching skills can help you to do that really quickly and effectively.
Yeah, I just want to, before I ask you the second part of that question, just put a plug in for this too, that when people go through our program, like all of our students are more confident
Oh,
when
yeah.
they're done with the program, just because the basis of what we do with folks. So we create coaches that have just more confidence. And oftentimes for professionals working inside of a system, whether it's OTs, PTs, OTAs, PTAs, whoever, like lots of times when we're lacking confidence, it's very difficult to advocate for ourselves in healthy ways. And our lack of confidence will also perpetuate challenges for our patients too in certain ways, right? So it actually will feed into there. So what I see a huge goal internally for any professionals, not just OTs, but we're speaking about OTs right now and OTAs, that just having more confidence working in the system actually makes your life a lot better.
Yeah. I was recognized, gosh, Brian, I must have been about 23. And I was on I graduated when I was 20. I must have been on my second or third OT job. And I didn't know it at the time, but I did know I was using energy medicine principles. I was using some energy medicine principles and I was starting to use some coaching questions with my clients. And I quickly got recognized in my department, was asked to chair a research committee at 23, and so it was really cool to be able to be a part of the system in a bigger and bolder way, not just be the person who was there punching a clock. And it was awesome to be with my clients, but to know that I was affecting the system in bigger ways was also, and being recognized for that was really cool.
Yeah, and making an impact in other professionals' lives too, right? That are
Yeah.
within the department. Okay, so now let's ask the question. So how can learning somatic coaching or becoming a certified somatic coach be of benefit to an occupational therapist? Is like, listen, I'm ready to grow out of
Yeah.
the system that I'm working in.
Well, that's easy because it's pretty easy to set up shop as a coach because first of all, it's at this point pretty highly regulated, not regulated, recognized profession. Like a lot of people have heard of it. And you can help people in so many awesome and creative ways. Like you can help people in so many creative ways when you have a coaching certification, when you have coaching as a part of what you do.
Yeah.
It also kind of elevates you as a professional, which is funny because I didn't think about it like that at all when I started doing coaching. It felt like it was actually a back step
Mm.
because I had my master's degree in OT and now I'm going to go do something that people do and it's unregulated. How could that possibly elevate my status in the recognition from my peers and my community and stuff? But it totally did.
Hmm.
When I started coaching, um, it elevated my status in my community and how people thought about me and how I felt about my work. And I was able to just create more opportunities for myself. So for me, I don't know if everybody feels like this. I know a lot of people feel like this because we've talked to a lot of people about it. For me, I felt like there was a massive glass ceiling that I was under, and I literally was born into the system under the glass ceiling. My very first job, I was the head of the OT department at 20 years old. Yeah, I was the only person in the department, but still. And I was making basically the same amount of money that the head of the Department of Physical Therapy was making. And it kind of scared the crap out of me because it felt like I just graduated. I'm 20 years old. I got my whole life ahead of me, and there was nowhere to
Nowhere to go
go.
up. Yeah, right.
There was nowhere to go. The only thing that I could imagine was becoming the head of the rehab department, which, by the way, looked awful. Send do paperwork. Oh my God. So that was terrifying. So yeah, I was already thinking about like the glass ceiling. And being a coaching professional and working for myself allowed me to actually there's so no ceiling that's limitless. There is not only is there no ceiling, there's no limits
Mm-hmm.
to the amount of creative opportunities I can create for myself.
Yeah. And so it sounds like, is it a match?
Is it a
Like,
match?
bing.
Ding.
Yeah, I think everything we've talked about, I mean, listeners, you can decide for yourself whether you think it's a match or not. It sounds like for me that it's an amazing opportunity for occupational therapists to learn a new skill, a new way of being within themselves, to grow and advance their own confidence, to learn to think differently. And this is whether or not an occupational therapist or OTA decides to stay working within a system. We need OTs and OTAs working within the healthcare system. We absolutely need that. Or an OT decides, listen, I'm ready to grow outside of that, have a different life experience,
Oh,
no judgment either way. Then also learning somatic coaching skills can be hugely beneficial for that to bring more income in. We might also say too, for an OT working inside of the system, having somatic coaching skills, it can pick up some coaching clients on the side,
yeah.
which can also add revenue and meaning and purpose and community and networking into their lives if that's something that they want to do. So there's all kinds of options for flexibility and freedom that somatic coaching, learning and being trained in somatic coaching can be a benefit for occupational therapists. I think it's just an amazing opportunity for connection and certainly a match.
It's such an amazing match. And I feel like one of the biggest things that I didn't know when I was in my very first job. I've told this story before, but I was in my very first job. It was 2 weeks after graduation, and I stood in the clinic and I realized I was not completely in the right place. And I didn't know why. The thing, one of the biggest things that was missing was the dynamic growth that happens as a coaching professional
Mm.
that is really inherent within the coaching profession that I'm growing to all the time. And as a therapeutic professional, when I graduated, it felt like my growth was done. And now I just had to live my life for the next 80 years or whatever, like the same. And I love that about the coaching profession is that we get to just continue to explore our own purpose and ourselves and how we think and how we perceive and how we feel right along with the questions that we ask our clients and the connections that we make for them. So certainly a match for me, Brian. And we love to talk to OTs and OTAs, and we love to have them in class. We give secret high fives to each other, in class. We're like, OTs, yeah. So it's really fun to
Do
have
you?
them.
I guess I'm not seeing those because
That's
I'm not
because
in the club.
that's because they're secret.
Okay.
Oops, I just our secret handshakes.
Secret OT handshakes.
Yeah, we love to have OTs in class. It's super fun.
Yeah, it is great. It's really
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks for it was fun to take a little trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
Appreciated that.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us this week on the podcast, and OTs out there. We looked at OTs and OTAs, I might say. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Otherwise, see you next week.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope that this conversation will help you improve your practice and change the way you think about your work, your clients, and yourself.
Continue your exploration of trauma-sensitive somatic coaching by listening to more podcast episodes at somaticcoachingacademy.com. You could be the trusted guide that people turn to help them with their most challenging situations and to reach their most precious goals. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.